If you want to understand Daniel, you have to understand where he was. He is in Babylon. Babylon. We've heard a lot about Babylon. Wow, what a place. Let's see. If you remember Abraham? Abraham came from Ur of the Chaldees. So Ur is not Babylon. It was a town in a similar area, but the Chaldees is the Chaldeans, which is the Babylonian people, right? We think that Babylon was the original Babel in Genesis chapter 11. So this is an incredibly old city. But by the time of Daniel's captivity, the king who he has taken is Nebuchadnezzar, which is actually Nebuchadnezzar II. There's two of them. So what do we know about Babylon? It's quite close to modern-day Baghdad. It's about 85 kilometers away, south of it. At the time, it was probably the largest city in the world. Prior to this, the largest city would have been Nineveh, where Jonah went to Nineveh. That was the capital of the Arameans, and they were the people who invaded Israel. These are the people who invaded Judah. So it's now, but that kingdom has fallen. These people are probably the largest city in the world. They're one of few cities to probably reach in excess of 200,000 people. Doesn't say, but it's about 22.5 kilometers square. It's a big square. So what they did is they dug a huge moat around the city, and they took the earth from the moat and they made a huge wall, which was one of the wonders of Babylon, is that they had this massive wall. And we'll look at the size of the wall later, but it was enough that you could have, on top of the wall, you could have buildings, and you could drive a 4-horse chariot down the middle of the wall. So it's a big wall. And it was this, it made it unable to be conquered, right? It was impenetrable. It was this huge, huge wall that surrounded their city. The river Euphrates ran through the middle of the city. So they had some, tunnels with some bronze. They had bronze gates all around the wall. They had gratings going into the water so people couldn't invade them. And the river goes through the middle. And it included something called the Hanging Gardens, which the Greek historians at the time referred to as one of the 7 wonders of the world. And so it's a very dry place. This is the Euphrates River area. It's incredibly dry, but there's a couple of big rivers. There's the Tigris River, and there is the Euphrates River. And so he did this amazing aqueduct architectural thing to bring water from a long way away up in the mountains so that it flowed on a downhill slope. And his wife was from Media. She missed the mountains and the greenery, so he built a mountain in the city with columns and platforms, and it was sufficient for them to plant an entire hill covered in trees and fruit and hanging things. And it was so this is the gardens. He built that for his wife, probably, we think. But it was one of the ancient wonders of the world. It's worth knowing, see there's another town up there called Opis. That's going to be important later on. Opis is on a river. If you can see the river tracing through, that's the river Tigris. And there's another river that runs through Babylon. So there's the 2 big rivers. Now, if you want to keep yourself safe, you need to be defensible. And so those rivers were very impenetrable, bigger than the Clutha, so really, really quite big. And if you have a standing army, it's hard for them to cross those rivers. So they were some really good defenses for the city of Babylon. The name of Babylon means Gate of the Gods, which is interesting considering if you think it came from Babel, where they were trying to build a tower up to heaven, right? It may have been, we think it's the same site as Babel, but they had a huge emphasis on astrology and witchcraft. And so here's a description of the city from the Greek historian Herodotus. He said, it lies on a great plain. The size of each face, its square, is 22.5 kilometers, the shape of it being square, thus the circumference is 90. Such is the size of the city of Babylon, and it was a magnificence greater than all other cities of which we have knowledge, so the biggest in the world. First, there runs a deep trench and broad trench full of water, plus the wall, which is 50 meters thick and 100 meters high, and it goes sort of all the way around the city. And at the top of the wall, along the edges, they built chambers which were 1 story high, facing one another, and between the rows of chambers they left space to drive a 4-horse chariot. And in the circuit of the wall was set 100 gates made of bronze. So this city is this is vast, impenetrable fortress. And before you get to the city, you've got to cross the rivers, which are the natural paces of defense. So it was really well positioned. You had water, you were safe. The wall, actually, I haven't put it in here, but they packed it with earth, and they found it, like, not far away over in the hills. They found a river that had a lot of asphalt in it. So they had bricks, and it was filled with asphalt and tar. So it was, think of like a tar-sealed road wall. So it wasn't just a dirt road or a dirt wall. It was actually something incredibly strong. In fact, if you think about the Egyptians building pyramids, they used big stones, right? They quarried these big stones. These guys baked bricks, like what we think of as a normal brick. And so everything they built was baked out of bricks. And so they have, bits of it still exist, and they have dug it up. And those are cities of Babylon. That's pictures of Babylon. That's what Babylon looks like now. They're digging it up. It was just kind of they have something called a tell, which is like a mound of dirt. Looks like a small hill, but actually, in fact, there's an old building or a city under there. And so what they've been progressively digging this out. And so that's what Babylon looks like at the moment. That bottom one, that's a wide panoramic photo. One of the things that has survived is something is one of the gates. So they had bronze gates, but they also had some really big kind of presentation gates into the city. And the one gate that has partially survived is called the Ishtar Gate, and it was covered with blue ceramic bricks. And on the bricks they had raised motif of lions and all sorts. It was incredibly beautiful. And in the late 1800s, some German archaeologists found this thing, and they didn't know what they found because they were just going through the dirt, and they found thousands and thousands of little pieces of clay tiles. Now, it was under the Ottoman Empire at the time. They convinced them to let them take them all back to Germany, and they rebuilt the gate. So this is what it looks like today, and 20% of that is original material. So thousands of years old. But that's the full-sized gate, and there was this big tunnel and all these raised motif of lions. So it was, and so they did this they excavated it all in the early 1900s and built it just before World War II. So it's one of these amazing things. They actually have rebuilt the gate inside a museum in Germany.